Hi, this is Eric from longboxreview.com. Welcome to the show. I have a very special show here today. My friend from the interwebs, Damian, will be joining us to talk about one of my very favorite comics from the last couple years, Danger Club. So, Damian, welcome.
Thanks for having me. My first time on a podcast.
Glad to have you.
I've done about 350 videos on my channel, Sleepy Reader 666, if anyone wants to check that out.
And they should. So, Damian, tell us a little bit about yourself. Since you are a first-time co-host on my podcast, tell us a little bit about your channel, and just real quick, in general, your interests in comic books.
Well, I'm a very long-time comic book reader, and I do what is essentially a comic book reading vlog on my channel. Basically, talk about what I've been reading lately or any other kind of thoughts that pop into my head. And it's part of this online community of people who like to chat about comic books. So, and I guess I started reading comics in the early Bronze Age, and I'm still reading them. I still like to read the new stuff and the old stuff.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of similar tastes. At the very least, we have a similar time frame in which we began reading, because I came into comics in the late Bronze Age, very late Bronze Age, and have I have a big fondness for that time period and into the next age of comics as well, because that's really when I got into a lot of different things.
Right. I think we do have a lot of similar tastes from what I've seen on Twitter and listening to your podcast and comments we've made back and forth to each other. And I think I'm maybe a half a step ahead of you. I probably started heavily reading comics around 73, 74.
Oh, yeah, definitely then, because I came in late 78, I think it was. So you have a few years on me then.
Right. And then I spent a few years being too old and mature to read comics. And then I really came back to them in a big way in about 79 as I got older and less mature, I guess.
Well, hey, you came in at a great time, because 79, 80, and getting into those early 80s.
I love that period. And I think that's, even though we probably read them at a different age, we both kind of have a strong feeling for how great that period was.
Yeah. And in fact, some of the things that were great back in the 80s, the early 80s, one in particular, the new Teen Titans, actually has quite an influence on the book that we're going to talk about today, or at least some of the issues of the book we're going to talk about today.
Agreed. I think it's very much, it ties to lots of bits of comic book history, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if that was where the creators started with Teen Titans.
Yeah.
Or New Teen Titans.
And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that as we go on in the with the issues. So I don't know when I discovered that, Damian, that you were into Danger Club, but as soon as I did, I was like, oh, finally, someone I could talk to about this book eventually. So Danger Club has long been on my list of things to focus on in the podcast. And so when I think I just saw a tweet, maybe it was one of the videos of yours that I was watching. You were talking about Danger Club. I think that was about the time that the final issue was coming out, perhaps a little earlier.
I feel like we started talking about it maybe on the 6th or 7th issue.
Okay, back when I came back from the hiatus, right? Yeah. Anyway, so it was really cool to encounter someone else who seemed to enjoy this book as much as I did.
Right. There was one other person in the YouTube comic book community that was talking about it a lot, and then he stopped his channel. So I feel like you and I are the only ones. I'm sure there are others out there. And I feel like it's good that we're doing this podcast, or video and podcast, because it's a potential hidden classic, I think, at this point. I mean,
that's a really good way to put it. I totally agree.
And probably a lot of its hiddenness has to do with its bad publication schedule.
Yes. Yeah. We actually had a question. I threw it out on Twitter before we got started to see if anybody had any questions for us or comments about the series. And we did get one from our good friend Travis asking about how the publication schedule may have affected our enjoyment of the book. And I think that's a question that we can actually table for next time, because what Damian and I are going to do for this episode is to talk about the first 4 issues of Danger Club. And then Damian will graciously join me at a later date to discuss the back end of the book. So we'll just do issues 1 through 4. Let's talk a little technicalities of the publication. So Danger Club, this is by mostly by Landry Q written by him. Art is by Eric Jones, with colors, magnificent colors. I'll just throw that out there right away, by Rusty Drake. And there's a few more people that are involved. Let's see, boy, now I'm blanking on it. Richard Starkings and Jimmy Betancourt did the letters and logos, it says. And there are some folks here that did flattening, which is that something you've encountered?
Technical step in coloring. You have to do flatting first before you can color.
Yes, color flats by Pernell Vaughn and Derek Hunter, it says, in the first trade, which is volume 1, the first 4 issues, volume 1. The title of that is Death. Very ominous.
And I believe in some of the issues there's an extra colorist for that first page, but not in all of them.
Yeah, that's correct. There were some color assists for a few pages. I don't know if it's every issue, but it's definitely in a few, especially in the first 4.
I guess I noticed that being the first page always being different than the rest of the comic, but perhaps you'll get to that in a bit.
Yes, those first pages, that's one of the things I love about this book. So yeah. Anyway, so the first 4 issues, the first issue was published in April of 2012. And then the second one came out in May 2012, about 5-ish weeks later. The third issue came out in July 4th, actually, 2012. So what a way to celebrate Independence Day with a great comic book, right? And then we start getting some somewhat more delays. Issue 4 came out in October of 2012. And then we definitely get some major delays going into the back end of this series. So, and I mean, there is a particular reason, because in between issues 3 and 4, this is when Rusty Drake's kids were involved in an auto accident. They were hit by a truck. Wow. And there was a point where I believe it was his son who, it was touch and go there for a while. Obviously, things, your kids get into such an accident, you're not so worried about coloring a comic book. So once I heard that, it was like, I don't care how long it takes. Everybody get their health in order, and everybody is feeling good about things, and then get back to the comic. And I think that's how the other creators, Landry Walker and Eric Jones, felt, definitely, because they not only did this book together, but they've been longtime collaborators along with Rusty on several things. Let's see, Landry Walker and Eric Jones. I don't know if Damian, do you know, did Rusty Drake work on the Supergirl comic that Walker and Jones did for DC?
I don't know that level of.
I meant to look that up, and I
do remember them talking about how they've worked with Rusty so much they didn't want to switch colorists.
Right.
That was out of the question for them, so they were just going to wait till he was ready.
Yes, exactly, and I commend them for that. I think that was the best choice, because we will talk about this as we get into the issues, because the colors of this book really, for me, is a lot of what sells it. That was the one thing, as when I read that first issue, that's a thing that really popped out to me immediately, was the first page construction. we keep talking around these things, but that first page that we get in every issue, and then the colors that just came out of that, is just amazing stuff. So anyway, that's it for the publication stuff. So let me start off here with, I'll read the solicitation for issue number 1. So I'm flipping through previews back in, this would have been February-ish of 2012. And I see this solicitation in Image Comics, that section of previews. And it says, faced with the deadliest peril the universe had ever known, the world's greatest heroes left the Earth to battle a nightmarish evil, and they never came back. Now only their teenage sidekicks remain. Will the Danger Club unite against this unknown cosmic menace, or will their struggle for dominance destroy them? The critically acclaimed creative team of Landry Q. Walker and Eric Jones from Supergirl Cosmic Adventures in the 8th Grade and Batman Brave and the Bold, which I did not know, so now I got to go seek out those issues, reunite to tell the apocalyptic tale of these titanic teens. I love that alliteration there.
And they got Titanic in there.
That's right, Titanic. So they had me at teenage sidekicks right there. I read that and I just said to myself, I'm in. What about you?
Your well-known addiction to sidekicks. I think what got me is I actually picked up on it late. So I heard someone else talking about it, and various things they said about it caught my attention. But I think it really was this comic book within a comic book aspect of the first page, leading then into a more modern take on the actual heroes. And one almost imagined these were comic books that exist in their world that are about them. And that just kind of tickled my fancy, kind of the part of me that really loves Alan Moore's ABC comics, like Tom Strong and that kind of thing. I was looking for more of that. And so I think that's what first attracted me to it. So yeah, that's how I got started. I'm not, although I loved the Teen Titans, I am not generally thinking about sidekicks. But it is interesting, the idea of sidekicks without the heroes there.
Yes.
So I quickly liked that idea.
Yeah.
And then quickly, I think being drawn in by that first page of the retro comic, was quickly drawn into the idea of this whole world that's fully populated already with a huge sort of rainbow of interesting sidekicks, and an interesting world too.
Yeah.
We get pretty quickly in this.
Let me add a little bit more. I found the official press release from Image Comics for Danger Club. Added a little bit more than what is in the solicitation. Let's see here. So it's up to this ragtag and fragmented group. So there you go, to battle the immense cosmic evil, that phrase again, that threatens the world. But the fight could be over before it even starts if the sidekicks' struggle for dominance destroys them from the inside. Here's a quote from Landry. Eric and I wanted to take the typical assortment of sidekicks and strip them of their authority figures. So there you go. You just made that observation yourself. These are the most powerful beings on the planet, and the oldest is around 16. You take any group of teenagers and put them in positions of absolute power, there will be some serious consequences. Some will seek to recreate the familiar hierarchy or attempt to establish their dominance, while some will rise to the occasion. So yeah, that's one thing that I've often kind of pondered. As I said, I and you mentioned as well, I love sidekicks. I love sidekick characters. This goes back to Robin in the New Teen Titans, and just all of the DC sidekicks. I just love that concept. It's not always done very well, and so I was very curious at what Danger Club could accomplish with that concept, based on my experience with other companies' sidekicks and how they were treated over the years. So
have you tried to figure out why you like sidekicks so much?
Well,
because I just sorry, because originally they were started because they thought that would make 10-year-old kids like the comics more.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably not what they were like when you started reading them.
Yeah, I think it had a lot more to do with Marv Wolfman's and George Perez's depictions of the New Teen Titans. So the late teenager phase of those characters.
Right.
And there, especially with Dick Grayson's Robin in that series, it was kind of what the struggles he was going through, growing up, becoming his own person, an adult, dealing with, his father figure, Batman, how he fit into the world with his friends, the New Teen Titans, in college. Although I think at that point he had dropped out of college in that continuity. But just I was about to enter that phase of my life, so I was kind of through Dick Grayson and the New Teen Titans, I was kind of looking ahead in a way, but also feeling those feelings that I was reading about. So I just really identified with those characters in the way, like I said, that Wolfman and Perez portrayed them. So, and then from there, it just became a logical extension. All of the other teenage sidekicks that came into and out of the New Teen Titans comics, and then other comics that I read, I just like the concept. I like the younger characters, and I think there's something that that Landry and Walker talk about. I don't know if it was in that podcast that you sent me. That was a Major Spoilers podcast, correct? That we listened to?
No. What was it called? It's a podcast that's centered around this particular artist who now slips my mind.
Oh, you're right. The Taylor Network podcast. That it was from that network.
Yeah, he and his friend always go to a bar and interview somebody.
That's right.
What's his name? He does things like painted Star Trek novels and Star Trek meets Doctor Who and stuff.
Okay, so I will try to remember to put that in the show notes for people to go listen to as well. In fact, I'm going to make a note of that right now, because I will forget.
Well, and if you'll pardon me, when you were talking about the Teen Titans, I realized the Teen Titans were already a reversal or an inversion of the old sidekick role, because it was about the sidekicks doing it on their own. It used to be, originally the sidekicks were a way to highlight how great the hero was.
Correct.
And so the Teen Titans took that and made it about what you were talking about breaking out on your own and establishing yourself beyond your father figure. So instead of the original idea of giving the kids something to relate to while reading Batman, it's now giving the kids something to relate to while they're rebelling against their parents, or while they're trying to establish their own identity as they grow up.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that feeling in Danger Club.
Yes. In fact, I think Danger Club really, I mean, it's 30 years apart between New Teen Titans and Danger Club-ish, around 30 years, maybe 35, something like that.
Think about how many years.
Yeah, I know. But I think Danger Club really captures that quality in a way that maybe the New Teen Titans didn't. So, but built upon that framework into what the structure that we get.
Right.
I'm tearing that metaphor apart here, but the structure that we get in Danger Club with these characters and the situation. So, I think maybe we should go ahead and get into the particular issues now. We've talked around them quite a bit. So
yeah. Sorry for dancing around it so much, people.
This is the kind of stuff I like, though. I mean, we can certainly talk about the issues and what we like about them and our observations, but just talking about the ideas behind these stories, that's really what interests me as a reader and lover of comic books. But let's get into it. I'll give a brief synopsis, and then Damian and I will just kind of riff off each other and talk about the things that we liked about the particular issues. So here we go. The synopses here, I tried to be just very general and not too spoilerific of them. I guess I should mention, although I don't know how you feel about this, Damian. I talked about this on, I think, the Gutters episode that I released, but do we really need to care about us giving a spoiler warning anymore? I don't know. This book has been out since 2012. It just ended this year, and I don't know. Anyway, if you haven't,
we could say beyond this point there will be spoilers. I mean, you can go get the trade or find the back easily. Buy them digitally also easily.
Exactly. Yeah, you can get them and read them. But if you don't care about this stuff,
big moments in each issue. So to talk about the issues afterwards, it would be hard to not spoil some of those big moments.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Anyway, so here we go. But like I said, I'm the synopses. I try not to be too spoilerific because I want us to get to arrive at those things as we go through the issues. All right, so there are several characters here in the books. I'm just going to name them real quick. We'll talk about them as we go on, though. Kid Vigilante, the Magician, and Jack Fearless, and they're kind of the three main characters of the book. Gather to take on another character that they've encountered in their past called Apollo. Robot 9, another character, goes to the moon to retrieve something. What is that exactly? Apollo is overseeing a contest of champions, and then Kid Vigilante and his allies arrive to stop him because Kid Vigilante sees this as a threat to the situation. Robot 9 gives Kid Vigilante these moon metal knuckles, which is a great concept. And then he's able to defeat Apollo in this fight that goes on in the first issue, and then fires a laser from an orbiting satellite, and that's pretty much how the first issue ends.
Right. So the first issue is seemingly quite simple. Although, can I read on the page, page before page 1, where they say, 3 months ago, the universe was in deadly peril. The world's greatest heroes were summoned into space to battle reality's ultimate evil. Our mentors, our guardians, our parents, our teachers. They left and they didn't come back.
Yeah.
So that's hovering over all. On one hand, we just have the kids fighting amongst themselves. You might just interpret that. On the other hand, there's some bigger problem that needs to be solved, that Apollo, by trying to get all the other kid superheroes to be his followers, is keeping from happening, keeping from fighting the menace. So I think that this first issue seems much simpler than it actually is.
Yeah. I think a lot of them are that way too. When I was writing the synopses, the plot elements of the issues are really simple. There's not a lot going on plot wise, but it's the background with the characters, it's the interactions with the characters, it's the reveals of this book that really make this book come alive for me.
Very true. And in this issue, one of the things that's revealed is how brutal and violent these kids are to each other.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I really noticed that on a second read. And I also read this issue digitally just recently, and with the close-ups of the panel to panel, just like first Kid Vigilante takes a real ass whooping from Apollo, and then he gets his brass knuckles from outer space, which have spikes on them, and literally shreds Apollo's face. Here's actually, for those people who are watching on YouTube, here's just one panel close up on it, which is actually one of the less violent panels of someone being shot in the ear by the girl from Micro Tokyo. I forget her name. She's the one who flies the robot.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm trying to find. Anyway, it's really a very brutal experience, and so it one of the things this first issue introduced to me was we are in a brutally violent universe, even though it's all these colorful characters and everything.
Yeah, it's funny you touch on that, because in one of the interviews that I found online about the book, Eric Jones is quoted as saying, "This is a visceral book. It's brutal, dark, and angry." And boy, is it.
And to me, that I think maybe this is a bleed over from later issues, but it kind of emphasizes this sense that there was maybe something immoral about training all these teenagers to fight and get involved in this stuff at their age.
Yeah.
So that the authors of this want teenage. I didn't even realize the oldest was 16. I figured maybe 17 and down, but 15, 16, 17-year-olds ripping up each other's faces and doing other brutal things to each other because they've been trained as superheroes.
Right. And it's funny you mentioned that too, the age thing. That's one of the things that I pointed out in my notes about this, is that I love how Eric Jones draws these teenage kids. They look like, for the most part, they look like teenagers. Whereas when you compare them to the so-called teen heroes of say DC or maybe even Marvel comics, they tend to look like just slightly shorter versions of the adult counterparts,
Right,
and they
right.
don't. To me, they don't look like teenagers. They look like adults that are slightly smaller, and that's it.
Right. Even in our beloved Teen Titans,
Yeah,
generally George Perez draws them just the way he would any superhero.
pretty much. Yeah.
I guess
So
Beast Boy looks a little bit younger.
yeah, right. Right. Well, yeah, that's a good comparison because Beast Boy was supposed to be about 16 in that book, in that
Right,
run, and he looked quite muscly compared to
right,
what I did when I was 16. So,
right. These are all skinny. The boys are all skinny little guys, which is what
yeah.
most teenagers are like, and
Yeah.
they have kind of baby fat in their faces still and stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we keep getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but that's okay. But let's oh God, before we do that, you read that introduction on the inside cover of the issue. What did you think of those in general? Did you appreciate them? Did you find them distracting to the story, or
I
what's your
appreciated
general
them, and
thoughts on that?
I think, I mean, I try to weigh whether it's a plus or a minus to Danger Club, but I think mostly a plus. It's, even though sometimes the plots are simple, it's very dense, and some of the density is set up just by that opening setup. Just a few words about what happened in the past makes everything different about the whole comic book than you would read it without. And I think that's definitely why that density in general is why I've enjoyed rereading them, maybe even more than the first time I read them.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. When I don't know how you read comics, Damian, but I'll read my issues, I'll enjoy them, and then I put them away, and I rarely go back and reread things because I've got so many other things that I haven't read yet. So I don't have much or I don't avail myself of the opportunities to go back and reread things, except for when I do things like this. So this is really good for that very reason. But yes, going through these issues again just made me appreciate the storytelling and the overall production even more.
Yeah, I got a lot more out of it. I liked it a lot. I instinctively kind of liked it the first time, but I feel like this time I'm seeing why I liked it so much,
Yeah.
and seeing extra layers to it.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's finally get to it. The first issue. So we've talked about them, but here we have, and Damien, I think you showed this already, but you have that first page, which is, my big hand's in the way here.
Mysterious Moon Menace.
Yes. So you get these, and I equated them as, and I think you mentioned this too, but they come across to me as kind of like these, they have a Silver Age quality to them.
Right.
And they're, even the way that they're colored is different from the rest of the book. So you get this kind of an older time feel to it. And you have even the dialogue, it says Apollo he's got his hand up motioning to the Danger Club, which is referencing these other characters, which on the first page, it says the Titanic teen trio. So we have Kid Vigilante, Jack Fearless, and the Magician. So that's the Danger Club, I presume. Did you take it that way too?
Yes, the core Danger Club was those three.
Right. So anyway, they're fighting this menace from another realm, and he's like, "Step aside, mortals. This is a job for a true Olympian." And then the dialogue that follows from the trio is, "No, Apollo, you're powered by the sun. You're no match for his moon metal." It's so Silver Age in its quality, right, and the way that the dialogue is being shown. It's just I love it. It's a new age take on a Silver Age trope, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting at.
It's kind of the Silver Age you want to read when I see it. It's like, I wish I could find that Silver Age comic.
As opposed to the Silver Age stuff that we actually got. Is that
frequently the Silver Age stuff we actually got, especially from DC, which this was a little less fun than you would hoped from the cover or.
Yeah, the real sanitized. kind of lame stuff from the Silver Age, you know, when they didn't want to rock any boats, they just wanted to sell some books. And so anyway, but then you also get this little, the second panel on here is, you know, the bonus. You have these two characters, Kid Monstro and the Princess, which we never see again. And we'll probably talk about that, but they're investigating the Mansion of Madness. And I just love the caption here from the princess. They're going into this mansion, and all she says is neat. I'm repeating myself, but I just love this Silver Age quality of these introductory pages. What these pages do beyond entertaining me, though, right, is to give a little bit of background for these characters. So like I mentioned, the Princess and Kid Monstro, they are referenced pretty early on in the next few pages. So at least there's some tie in there. We get to see them, what they look like, but something happens with them. More importantly, though, is that first panel that we showed on the video with Apollo and the trio, because we know that they used to work together in some fashion.
Right.
So they have a history together, these characters, even though if we go by what Walker said in the interview, you know, Kid Vigilante is 16. So how old are they in this panel, you know? So there's only a few years here where they've interacted with each other, but they do have that history, and it comes into play in this very issue. So
exactly. But it also, this is perhaps the facade that the public would see, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because even when we find out some mentions of their previous adventures, it sounds like they never really liked each other. I think there's reference to that later in the issue, but
yeah,
with Apollo.
Exactly. Damian, did you take these because you mentioned, you know, the public face of these characters? One thought I had was, are these things in the Danger Club universe, are these comic book adaptations of these characters' adventures in that universe?
That's what I took it to be, and maybe it's from having read so much Alan Moore, where in several of his books there are comic books in his universe.
Mm-hmm.
In Tom Strong, there's a Tom Strong fan club, and there are Tom Strong comic books which show his origin and things like that
right.
we see within the Tom Strong comic that we read. So I kind of took it to be that sort of thing.
Yeah. And
they don't ever really tell us or explain that, I don't think.
Right. I actually didn't think about that. I just took it initially when I first read through these issues. It was only when I was rereading them that I thought, well, maybe that's what they're going for. Otherwise, I thought they were just kind of playing around with, well, and they do, not kind of. These guys, the creators of the book, play around with a lot of different tropes of superhero comic books, and I thought they were just throwing this first page in as a way to, like I said, it really draws you in because it's different from what we expect for a modern comic book reading audience. And so I just kind of took it sort of at a face value, but then, as I said, when I was rereading, I thought, well, maybe that's what's going on here. But I do like how every one of these pages, and we'll probably talk about each one as we get into each issue, but whatever is shown on the page, there is some connection to what comes after that page in the main story. And that's what I really like about it. And we don't get a lot of history, like with the Princess and Kid Monstro thing. This whole Mansion of Madness, and for that one, you can there might be some connections to a later issue when the characters go after the Empire of Evil or whatever that group is.
Right.
But you don't get a direct connection with that particular story that's hinted at on this first page. But the characters do talk about those two specific characters and what happened to them within the main story. So I really like how there's always a connection here. You may not always see it immediately, but there is something within that issue that connects you to what the Silver Age prelude, that first page, is talking about. So, okay. Anything else about that first page?
Just that I love the contrast as you go from that first page to the second page, and the art entirely changes, the mood entirely changes. We're in a dark world where people are frowning all the time and kind of sneering at each other, and everything looks kind of bombed out. So it's the contrast between the pages that I
Yeah,
really
definitely. Yeah. Well, and not only that, but just okay. So we talked about the color a little bit, but just the coloring of that first page when you get those really deep reds and oranges compared to the kind of the washed out quality of that first page.
Yeah.
It's that's just incredible. And but yes, contrast that with kind of like the darker backgrounds, the the destruction of that part of the city that we see in like on page 3 of the book. It's just
Right.
an incredible contrast. Even Kid Vigilante's costume, which is this really dark blue, as you're showing there in the panel, with that. What would you say? That's like a red violet sort of color that forms the V and his gloves. I think that's a pretty good.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. It's yeah, I don't know what color you'd call that, but nothing is a straightforward color. It's all
yes. That's I love. That's another thing I love about the art is how the colors really aren't. I mean, it's not like an old even like Bronze Age comic where the color palette was very limited based on the technology they had, compared to now where the colors can just pop off the page. The doorway that the magician creates and walks through with the coloring there at the bottom there, it's like this really bright orange. It's almost like you're seeing light on the page.
True.
As much as you could possibly do so on printed material. It's just amazing the stuff that the colorists are doing.
Not to advertise digital too much for people who hate it, but this is one of those comics where you can really get a lot out of the digital coloring, because then it really is like light on the page, like with that picture there, and then I guess he goes through.
Yeah, there you go. It's just amazing. When you get that close up like that, that's really awesome. I'm not. I guess I'm not as big a fan, Damian, because I did not buy the digital issues.
Not yet, anyway.
No, not yet, but I plan to. I actually have 2 copies of each issue because when I went to,
then you're a big fan.
I went to the Emerald City Comic Con this last time, and Mr. Walker was there, and so I made it a point to go talk to him, and he sold me the issues he had. He signed them for me, and so I have double issues. I have the 2 trades, and I have issue number 8 digitally. So the completist in me needs to go buy issues 1 and 7 digitally as well. So I won't be able to help myself. But that's how good this comic is, guys. This is it's such a good story. So, okay.
And the body language on these pages is so different too. And they look like insecure teenagers, the way they're standing around and looking down at the ground and not looking each other in the eye and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I noticed on my second reading of it.
Do you think that's just because of their age, or because I kind of took it as they have this situation that they have to deal with, and it's only what it say at the beginning here. It's 3 months since their mentors and their parents, the adults in their lives, have disappeared in this blaze of glory that, as far as they know, situation. So they're still kind of they're grieving,
true,
from the loss of these characters in their lives. So, and the enormity of the situation that they're dealing with right now, which is to go after their sort of ally Apollo.
Right, they're much more powerful ally Apollo.
Yes, exactly. Anything about those 2 pages, Damian, 2 and 3, that you want to point out?
I think other than the postures and stuff, that was, and that we see it's a bombed out world. It's not a very good place to live anymore. Probably, I don't know if that's always been that way or just because the superheroes have left.
Yeah.
I
Well, I
think
think,
mostly because the superheroes have left.
yeah, they do make comments about that, but they never explicitly come out and say this is a direct result of this thing, whatever that happens to be. And that's one of the things I like about the book. So I just want to point out here on page 3 that they show Jack Fearless in one panel near the bottom.
Where he refers to Monstro, who we saw.
Yeah. Anyway, but you have Kid Vigilante there also, and so you have the 3 characters showing. I got a bit of a glare on the. Anyway, but so you got these familiar tropes of characters as well. So Kid Vigilante is more or less the Robin of the situation. Jack Fearless looks just like Nick Fury, right? A young Nick Fury, which interesting.
But he later, well, I don't know if we want to talk about what he later turns out to be.
That comes up in issue 4, I think. So yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay, I mean, he turns out to be more of a Bucky figure.
Exactly, which is an interesting inversion of that trope too. And then the magician is just a magical character, but I don't think he has a direct analog. I
don't think of magical characters that have had sidekicks, but he's certainly in the, I don't know, in the realm of Doctor Strange and
you have Zatanna and her father, but
Zatanna and her father. I guess there's that.
Well, and we do have that direct connection with the Wonder Wizard and Samantha that gets revealed later. So there is that, but the magician character himself is even a further connection down the line from that direct analog between, like, say, the DC characters and here. Regardless, we see a lot of these kind of analogs, and I know Walker and Jones wanted to play with those things as well, in particular. So at the very least, we as readers come into this, even though we don't know the background, the history, what exactly is going on when the story starts, we are comforted, I think, in the familiarity of these character tropes. We understand them visually, instinctively, and we just kind of go with it.
A character that looks like Nick Fury, who's possibly 15 years old smoking a cigar, is a bit striking.
Yes, exactly.
So I was always very curious about him. I have to say, as a criticism of this book, a little bit, it's very hard to figure out what the names of the characters are. I wish that would have been a little easier to know who was who.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of him as, Kid Vigilante I picked up pretty soon, but otherwise I was like the Nick Fury guy and the Wizard guy, and rather than knowing what their names are. Eventually, if you pay really close attention, you can find out the names of everyone.
Yeah. Well, but again, that I've touched on this before, but I really like that quality. I don't like being hit over the head with things as I'm reading a story. And that's one of the things, when I used to write fiction, that's one of the things that I always try to do is come up. I would not always, I'd have a backstory for the story that I was telling, but I didn't, and the characters would refer to things, but I wouldn't just explain everything in the story that I was writing. And I really appreciate that Walker and Jones, how they do that in this. So something's happened. These characters have to go deal with it, and they just make passing mention. Like here on that page, we get that mention of Kid Monster and the princess. They're out of play in this situation now because of this attack from the Sky Pirates. Whoever they are, we never know who the Sky Pirates are, but we can, they're just a group. We don't need to know exactly who they are. We don't even need to see them, and we don't. All we need to know is that these characters are no longer in play, and these 3 characters in particular they appear to me anyway to be really apprehensive about what they have to deal with right now.
But I do think that lack of information, to me, signals that this is a book more for the hardcore comic book reader and less new reader friendly, even though we're all new readers to this world. But you need to be secure in your comic book reading and superhero reading experience to not know who everybody is and still keep reading. It's like when you pick up an issue, somewhere in the middle of the story arc or something.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I actually that's something that I would love to hear from anybody watching this video or listening to the audio version of this. If you had experience with this book or even other books like it, in the sense that you didn't get all this information as you're reading the story, how do you feel about that? Do you like that? Do you prefer to have a little bit more so that you get into the story, or what? So make sure you give me some feedback along those lines. Okay, so anything else we want to talk about those pages?
I think I'm good as far as that.
Okay, we were really talking a lot about the individual stuff, but there's just a lot to talk about. On the next two pages, there's a 2-page spread, and just from an artist storytelling standpoint, there you go.
Right. It looks really good. And sorry, you were going to say.
I was just saying the flow of the story on the page is, I love the way that Eric Jones did that. So you have at the top, you have the longer panels spanning across, and then you go down, and then you have the panels that are inverted and then overlapping and continuing across, so that it flows. It does that backwards S, or no, not backwards S, but it has that curvy pattern on a page to get you from the top left of this 2-page spread to the bottom right of the second page. It's just wonderfully constructed, and it does show the world larger,
the larger bombed out world that we're in.
Yeah. So from the first few pages, we're going from the micro level to more of a macro level, as we are being introduced to the universe in that same sense. So I love how the visuals and just that the way that the storyline is getting wider and wider and showing us more and more. So wonderful storytelling there.
And to throw it against digital comics, this is the kind of thing you've got to appreciate on the page. Jones is a really good visual storyteller, taking you from moment to moment really skillfully.
Yeah.
Which is then showed off if you don't, or did you have more to say about these pages?
Just some stuff about the dialogue here. Kid Vigilante talks about Apollo being a bastard. With the heroes gone, he's now the most powerful bastard on the planet. So it's up to them to take care of the situation. We don't know exactly what that situation is or why they feel they have to do this. Magician says, yeah, well, I hope you're right. Vigilante says, I'm always right. It's my superpower.
Right.
I love that. That was,
and we're left wondering, is that really his superpower?
Exactly.
He just say that.
We don't know what that means exactly. So
that is a brilliant touch there. He really looks like a kid in that picture. It's like this kid saying this possibly 15-year-old or something saying, my superpower is to always be right.
Yeah. Right.
Trust the teenager on that level.
Well, and now that you bring it up, what teenager doesn't think that they don't know everything?
True.
So,
but do any teenagers think any other teenagers know what they're talking about?
Well, or anybody else for that matter, but yeah.
True, yeah.
Okay. The next two pages we see Robot 9 for the first time. There's this
is 2 silent pages.
For the most part, yeah. Which that was pretty cool.
There's some talk on the last bottom of the second page.
Yeah. So Robot 9 is landing on the moon. We see the pilot of this robot. What's her name?
Yoshimi, maybe?
Yoshimi, yes, exactly. There you go. I had it in my notes, but I can't find it. So just to show for the people who are watching this, these are my notes, handwritten notes that I did here.
Eric does his homework.
It took a while. That is just through page 2 for this first issue. What I just showed you. Full page, single spaced, handwritten notes. So anyway.
I'm far lazier.
Well, I'll tell you what.
So I was just impressed by the visual storytelling. They didn't need words here, so they didn't give them to us.
Exactly.
We learned there's a little girl inside the giant robot piling at it, that she's on the moon, blasting something, probably looking for something.
Now, when you say little girl, when you first read this, what do you mean by little girl?
Right. Well, she's physically very petite, but we learn later exactly how little she is. But at this
Exactly.
point, we
Right.
don't know because
Exactly.
it's a giant robot.
Yeah. But yeah, so the way that she's portrayed, and we'll get it. Yeah, Yoshimi. It says her name right there. That's right. But yeah, the way that she's drawn, she looks very young, piloting this big robot thing. So
You could be an 11-year-old the way she's drawn here.
exactly, yeah, exactly. How old are some of these characters doing what they do? It's just amazing, considering what comes up in the storyline. It's just amazing that how these characters deal with and adapt to these situations. It's just probably unrealistic, but then again, it is a superhero comic, so we kind of take that take it as for granted that they can handle these impossible situations so calmly, or as much as they can. Next up, the characters go to this stadium in the city, and this I mentioned in the synopsis. This is the contest of champions that Apollo is doing. And we are introduced to a character that is referenced as Vesuvius, and you get this great panel showing this character.
Yeah, that's a really awesome panel. I love that one.
Yeah, there you go. So
it's
there's
one of the many times where I went, "Oh, I want more of this world."
exactly. So this he's a living volcano, right? Maybe they even call him that, but the name certainly suggests that's what it is. But just that visual there with the smoke and the fire and everything. And he's punching some character. So Apollo is recruiting his group. I don't know how would you.
It's not totally clear to me what Apollo's. He's having them fight to the death, I think, but saying, or maybe not to the death, but saying that he loves them all and he's going to make them his family. So
yeah, he does reference, this is where we see who is worthy to join me. And so you challenge his champions to become part of his elite. He does say my elite here. But he does want everybody there to obey and be loyal and worship him.
Right. So I guess he just wants them to beat the stuffing out of each other. And then the champions will be his elite and the rest will also follow him. He wants worshipers.
Which made me think that maybe this is, often in comics when we get introduced to God characters or godlike characters, their strength is derived in many ways from, or their power is derived at least from their worshipers. How many worshipers they have, how fervent their worship is. And so I was wondering, is that what we're dealing with here? Or is it, is he just being metaphorical? But you're right. It is not clear why he's doing what he's doing. Why is he amassing this army? Is it to defend against this menace or some other purpose? Kid Vigilante on the next few pages, at least when he confronts Apollo, is saying, he at least is implying, at the very least, that that's not what Apollo's objectives here is. So
right.
What exactly is he up to? I don't think we ever find out, but it doesn't matter.
Well, certainly from the evidence of this issue, we could think that it's actually just two rivals, each who view the other as the bad guy. I mean, we can't be sure what's going on here.
So do you think that Apollo is amassing this army because he knows that Kid Vigilante is going to come after him at some point?
Well, I think when I've read this first issue without having read further issues, I thought perhaps this is Apollo's way of preparing for for this invasion that they're all expecting at this point from outer space. However, it's not clear. It seems that Kid Vigilante and his group believe that the only thing Apollo is doing is taking advantage of the superheroes not being here to become the leader, because he just wants to be the leader and wants to be worshipped.
Right. This is our first time of, like I said, we were talking about expanding the universe as we're reading through the issue. This is the first time that we see a lot of other teenage sidekick characters amassed in one area. It was really striking to me two things about these few pages and what follows. Eric Jones likes to draw these really big eye masks on these characters that fill the top of the character's cheeks and goes up into their forehead area, which is really an interesting choice. And most of them, with few exceptions in this book, most of them have the white eyes that we're used to for superheroes that wear masks. So that I thought that was interesting. But you had mentioned before, Damian, how there's so many teenage sidekicks in the world. There are dozens here in this part of the story. It's just, how many superheroes are in this world that have chosen to have sidekicks?
Yeah, you would think it's somewhere between 50 and 100 maybe, or that's how I kind of sensed it, about 100.
Yeah, so wow, that's a lot of characters. I don't think even DC has that many sidekick characters over its 75-year history.
Well, and I do wonder whether they were being mesmerized in some way by Apollo, or just doing it out of their own what's the word? Shallowness. Their willingness to worship Apollo, because they are all shown with white eyeballs. Let's see. And in this bottom panel, even ones who aren't wearing, am I showing it? I can't tell.
Yep.
Even ones who are not wearing masks have white eyes.
Well, I think
I don't know if that's stylized or whether it's really supposed to indicate they're all kind of mesmerized.
Yeah, perhaps. I didn't take it that way. I just thought this was a stylistic choice by Eric Jones for character. Like I said, the characters who wear masks, they have white eyes. And I think that maybe detracts or at least suggests something that maybe isn't there. Or maybe it was intentional to do that. I don't know. At this point, we just don't know what's going on and why. We're just absorbing as we go. But as you said, something about Apollo on the next couple pages. So Jack Fearless does say something about that. At first, I thought maybe Apollo was using some kind of Greek god power to make everyone love him. And then Magician shoots that down, saying, no, I'd sense it if it was magic.
You're right.
And Vigilante says, the bottom line, it doesn't matter. It ends now. He's building an army, and given his personality, we can't wait any longer. And he says, it's time to beat the hell out of this son of a bitch. So again, we get that, this ain't your mama's New Teen Titans, right?
Right.
I can't imagine Robin, words like that coming out of Robin's mouth back in the 80s.
It sounds like he's going to enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. Here's that brutal, visceral quality of these characters in this world. It's like, wow. Imagine if they were, if Walker and Jones went really wild, into the R-rated territory of this book. I can imagine it'd be like a Game of Thrones type, has a quality to it. With these characters and the way they talk and the way they act. I mean, it's already pretty close in some ways with the violence, but it could be maybe even somewhat painful to read if it went even further than it did. Okay. So, like I said, on the next few pages, so the battle's about to begin. Did you notice, Damian, there's that one panel where Kid Vigilante jumps down. Apollo isn't aware of this just yet. He's still talking to his congregation, but then Kid Vigilante has this ball in his hand.
Right.
I don't know what it is.
Some kind of device, Batman-like device that
exactly
that Vesuvius.
Yeah.
While Apollo's not looking.
Exactly. This big, really powerful living volcano, and he's taken out by this little thing where he gets hit in the head by. What the heck is that? Right. Again, we don't know, and we really don't need to know, but I just love that quality where it's like, bang, the big guy's taken care of, and we can get to what is the point of this scene, which is the battle between the so-called powerless hero or non-super powered hero and this god.
Yep.
With the rest of the team, the Magician and Jack Fearless going after the what was referred to earlier in the pages as the New Olympians. So Apollo's honor guard or whatever, however you want to put it. Robot 9 is coming. Again, we get the wonderful colors here. You can see again the orange and reds, and then also you get these purplish violet colors as well. And that just runs through this issue. So you get these really warm colors. If you think about the color palette, these are actually considered warmer colors,
Right.
and except for maybe the purplish, but used in this way, you know, these warm colors, but used in a very violent fashion. So that's an interesting choice.
Right.
How
It
often?
kind of stimulates the brain in a certain way.
Yeah, yeah.
Hardcore.
How often do you see that purple color in comics in general? That is, I just love that. Maybe you do. Just in the comics that I read, I don't see it very often. So
I'm seeing more and more unusual colors in comics. I think the colorists are learning lots of new tricks lately. But I agree that the color is a very strong element here.
Oh, Damian, I just turned the page. I just realized that this set of pages just came out from the staples in my book. Oh,
I had that happen in one of my other issues, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, it just pains me to see that. Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, a loose center page is one of my big bugaboos.
Yeah. Oh,
that and a ripped cover are the two things that drive me.
Dang it. Good thing I have another issue or another copy of this issue.
Well, did you also buy the trades?
Yes. But I like the floppies better.
Yeah. Well, the floppies are, especially with art like this.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So basically in the next few pages, it's just a big fight scene between all of the characters going on here.
Right. It gives us a chance to see a bunch of different super sidekicks.
Yeah.
I love the guy with the skull mask on, if that is a mask.
Oh no! Look at the earlier page when we see, I think it's page 7 or 8, where we first see the Apollo with his group. There's just a floating skull on that body. It looks like, to me anyway. That's an interesting character design.
Oh yeah, is that the same one? I guess
think so.
In this picture, you can't tell his skull is floating, but yeah, I like that one. But I like a bunch of them. So this is sort of the fight before the important fight, though.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the following page where it says, all right, round 2 is where we're getting
So the tide turns in the fight with...
we're seeing Vigilante get his ass
yes.
pictures, and we feel sorry for him. Or I did when I was reading this.
Uh-huh. But like I said, when he says, all right, round 2, you mentioned how the characters... or how he when he was jumping into the arena, you know, he was maybe looking forward to this. That smile, on his face. He's bleeding from one eye, from his nose, from his mouth, the on his chest. The blood is just collecting on his costume, and he's smiling about this.
Right.
This guy is vicious.
Yeah, he's looking forward to the way he set Apollo up.
Mm-hmm.
Because Apollo thinks he's winning.
Well, yeah, just the look on Apollo's face in that following panel, he's like, okay, I guess bring it on, you foolish mortal. And then Yoshimi delivers those knuckles, and then Apollo's face changes, his demeanor changes. So
that's the first hint at how small Yoshimi is, because she's carrying the knuckles in a giant suitcase, or what appears to be a giant suitcase.
Right. Yeah, because in all these panels, other than the one that you just described, where this suitcase looks really big on her. Oh, okay. So then there is a panel here where she's actually delivering the suitcase to Kid Vigilante, and that's the first time we definitely see that she is about 5, maybe 6 inches tops tall.
Right.
So yeah, she is a small girl in a large robot. So then we get the battle starts again, and there's the panel there where Yoshimi shoots the girl. You showed that earlier in the video. Shoots her in the ear, and that's where in my notes, Damian, I go, wow, this comic is really violent. To show someone getting shot in the ear is that's worse to me than the beating that Kid Vigilante was taking from Apollo.
And the blood coming out of the ear and spattering.
Yeah. Oh, Wonderfully done by. I assume that's Rusty Drake's contribution there. And then you get the big splash page here of
Big punch.
the big punch.
With
And again, you get the purplish colors on the page.
Right.
So nicely done there.
That doesn't seem like one of his best action scenes, that particular page, but for a splash page. But
I think you're right.
Picky.
Yeah.
Because I like the next page a lot more, actually. Like is a weird word because someone is getting all their teeth knocked out.
Okay. Why do you like this next page more?
The action is so visceral and so well choreographed, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the coloring is amazing too there. And my whole feeling about what was going on turned around when I first read this. I went from feeling bad from Kid Vigilante to feeling bad for Apollo and not being sure anymore if I like Kid Vigilante.
Yes.
And that's, in the earlier scenes that we can look back and see how he was looking forward to the fight and everything, but I didn't really pick up on exactly what all that meant until here, mm-hmm. where it's like he's looking forward to just totally trashing this guy. Maybe he has to do it for the safety of the world, but he's going to relish it. And it was probably his ideas to make those things spiky rather than just regular brass knuckles.
Well, it kind of reminded me of, I don't know if did you ever read Ender's Game?
Yes, I read it a long time ago, but
yeah. So yeah, there's the scene, and boy, forgive me, I don't remember the characters' names. Ender ends up fighting this bully early on in the story, and he knows he has to not just defeat the bully, he has to do it in a way that will prevent any future recurrences of this bully, and just viciously beats this character down. I think he even breaks an arm or a leg or something in the story. I don't really remember, but it reminded me of that. So that Apollo not only is defeated here, but in the future as well. Of course, that's we find a few different things, or at least one different thing in a future issue. But at this point in the story, it seems like Kid Vigilante is certainly exerting his dominance here via the vicious, brutal beating that he imparts upon Apollo. I will note too, these pages, at least in the first issue, maybe the first two, I have to look at my notes, but it seems like there's a lot of close-ups of hands and arms in this book. And I'm not sure exactly if that's just the way that Eric Jones wanted to portray the action scenes, but there's a lot of appendages being shown in a way that I don't think I've ever seen in any other book.
Huh.
So, like I said, I don't know what that means, or if it means anything, but there's a lot of that, especially on the page that you were describing that you liked.
Right. That was a lot of arm and fist crossing the page.
Yeah.
I assume that's just his kind of style of showing action is extending the arms.
Yeah.
I did think when we find out that the brass knuckles come from the moon, or they're not brass, of course, they're made from some. There's one thing that can hurt you. Look what Yoshimi found on the moon. And then I go back to the very first page with the Moon Menace, where they tell Apollo, you're no match for his moon metal.
Mm-hmm.
So that what we saw in that scene, even though it was all Silver Agey and with a patina of innocence, was a hint of something, to come later in the book.
Exactly.
And in fact, the villain there has spikes on his knuckles. So that's the reason perhaps for the spikiness of the knuckles that he gets later. And I don't know if I noticed that on the first reading or not.
Okay. Okay, so then, of course, Kid Vigilante beats Apollo and then starts talking to the crowd. This threat that our mentors went off to fight, it's still coming. You need to join me or get out of the way. That's his message.
Right.
And then tells them that he's, let's see here, I've commandeered an orbital defense satellite. Its weapons are locked onto these coordinates. You have 60 seconds to leave. 60 seconds. He is not messing around. And of course, given that he's beaten a god, and I assume that Kid Vigilante just in general has this reputation
Right.
among these teen sidekicks that they just scatter as quickly as possible.
Right. One of them looks like the Green Lantern here. I just
That's funny. I just noticed that myself just before you said that. So yeah.
He doesn't have a ring on, but
Right.
yeah. And then the final page, if I may.
Go ahead.
They go ahead with it. There's the bloody and beaten Apollo, and a beam comes down from a satellite and pretty much appears to nuke him.
Yeah. So yeah, when I read this issue the first time, Apollo is dead.
Right.
As far as we know, he's dead. What could survive that, especially after that beating? Plus, you get that connection between the glowing knuckles, the moon metal knuckles, and that laser. They're the same color or very, very similar. So I thought, well, maybe that's
right.
Rusty Drake suggesting that to Apollo, this is a murderous beam. This is the killing blow.
Right. And maybe they could have just killed him originally that way, but first they wanted to humiliate him.
Yeah. I think that was a key component to Kid Vigilante's strategy here. He had to do it in that way in order to get the result he wants later.
So I ended this issue not knowing if I liked Kid Vigilante. Now later in the series, I do like him again, but I felt a bit negative towards him here.
Okay, so so that's basically, we've gone over the plot and talked about some key elements that we liked. So what were your general thoughts having ended that first issue? Maybe both if you can recall when you first read it as compared to rereading it again now, recently.
Well, I don't know. I think there was just a progressive taking away of my innocence as a reader, in a sense, from the beginning, the very innocent opening scene, and then we get the kids gathering together, and each step along the way makes everything seem less innocent and more visceral and possibly unpleasant, but in a way that I also want to. I also have gotten all kinds of hints about this world, and I want to know so much more because of it seeming so rich. So it's kind of this, for me, it was a weird juxtaposition of the sort of rich, delightful superhero world and the gritty, unpleasant, violent world.
Yeah.
But it did it to me step by step, so it kept drawing me through.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty much how I that's the takeaway I had about the book as well. I did in my notes here. So this is based on my reread. I wrote down, wow, this is not Teen Titans. It's like Teen Titans meets Powers in tone. And then in some of the stuff that I read, the comparison was made, I think, by the writer of the article. It's Teen Titans meets Lord of the Flies, which the first issue definitely I can see that comparison. What comes later, maybe not so much,
right?
But definitely Teen Titans-esque characters and situations, maybe, but with a very adult aesthetic,
right,
applied to it.
Like I said, like they're giving us the Teen Titans and then taking them away.
Yeah, subverting it. And again, so I think I have in my notes here how things are subverted. So we get these familiar tropes of teen superheroes, but then they're inverted in a way, or in some ways, that I think are kind of fresh. I can't say that I've read every story out there involving teen superheroes, but for all the ones that I have read, this is something new to me. This take was new.
Yeah. You definitely are not in familiar territory by the end of the book.
I want to know more because we get these hints about the backstory, the history. We don't get them. Just makes me want to inhabit this world even more. Oh wait, so one of my notes, one of my questions here that I wanted to ask you is: this a commentary of the Copper Age, the '90s ultra-violent, grim and gritty comics that we got?
I don't know. Is it a commentary on it, or is it incorporating that particular aesthetic into a more modern comic? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a commentary on it, I'm not sure what the commentary. I can see the commentary on all the older comics better than I can see it on the Dark Age, or I don't know. Yeah. I think we still live in a pretty violent age of comics.
That's true.
So I'm a little confused on that whole issue personally.
I like I said, it was just a question that popped in my brain. I ended up doing that quite a bit. I would, based on what I was reading, I would see these connections, but I wasn't quite sure if it was really making a connection or if it's just my brain misfiring and going off into a direction that it's not pertinent to the particular story. But
I mean, did you feel there was kind of a commentary here?
I don't know. I think you're more right in the sense that superhero comics in general these days are just more violent than they used to be. You know, there's the whole relaxing of the comics code or the abandonment of the comics code. So I think that tends toward that kind of storytelling anyway. The writers and artists are creating their craft for a more adult audience than perhaps was done in years past. So that makes sense that they're doing it, that they're telling more adult stories. I don't know. Probably not a commentary. It's just a reflection or at least a continuation of that which has come before.
I mean, it could be that the creators are saying, well, if you want violence, let's put it into a context where it's really violent and disturbing.
Well, okay, so in that sense, that is sort of a commentary, I guess, on that.
If that's what they're doing. I mean,
I
just
exactly
pulled that out of my hat right now because I didn't think of it before. But
I can see that, though. That makes total sense.
Because it is more disturbing with people, if the characters are between 12 and 16 rather than older characters.
Right. Okay, well, I think we've talked issue 1 to death.
I know. I'm looking at the clock and thinking, if we take 40 minutes per issue, we're in trouble.
Yeah. So I think we will, if you don't mind, we'll touch on what we need to touch on, but maybe do a quicker read through of each issue.
Sure, of course.
But I just like in my notes, I took like 3 pages of notes on that first issue, and then for every other issue, it's about 1.5 pages to 2 pages. Because there's just so much to be introduced to and talk about based on that first issue. So now that we've done that, we can gloss over some things and really focus in on the important stuff of each issue. So issue number 2, and I'll show the cover there, which is a different. Oh, let me do the comparison here. So you had that first issue cover. With the fist. So there, Damian, there we go. There again, there's that focus on the fist and the colors, and you have the characters there. So that I think this. Oh, we need to talk about something else real quick before we move on too. You got this. I think effectively establishes the tone of the book. Maybe not into the really dark territory that we do get, but you certainly get a sense of there's a battle that needs to happen. Going on here.
The first cover is pretty grim. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
there you go. That's a better thank you.
In contrast to the second cover.
Yeah, exactly. So then you get your shimmy on the cover there with some Japanese text. Yeah, she's being fired on, but the colors, the color palette is much brighter and lighter than the issue number 1. So that was an interesting choice.
It looks more like the fun, safe world of comics.
Yes, exactly.
Traditionally expect,
and you're focusing in on one character, and while indeed that does occur in this issue, It's not just that. So I thought that was an interesting choice to be made as far as what's shown on the cover here. But before we get into that, let's talk about the logo Danger Club, which of course evokes the whole Fight Club thing, that movie, that book, right? I don't know if there's much to say about it other than that. I will admit that when I went through first reading this story, I didn't pick up on the whole Fight Club connection. Even after I saw that movie, I saw it years ago.
I'm sorry, I'm missing it now. Is the logo similar to the Fight Club logo?
Yeah. There are connections there.
I don't remember the Fight Club logo, so
especially the club part. Because in the Fight Club, it's those words cut into that bar of soap. So it's evocative of that.
Right.
And considering the violent nature of the one part of that story, the Fight Club story, compare that to the violent nature of this book, so there's that tenuous connection at least. But I thought it was you, Damian, that had pointed out something about Fight Club and Danger Club, and that's what got me thinking about it.
It must. I don't think it was me.
Okay, well, maybe I thought it was you, but maybe I saw somebody else talking about it. But anyway, I just wanted to just mention that aspect of it. And there is, in some of the interviews that I read, they do talk about that just a tiny bit. They do mention that at least. Okay, so let's move it quickly into issue number 2. Here's the synopsis: Kid Vigilante. Oh yeah, spoilers. There's a spoiler here, sort of, but you can't miss it. It's right up front. Kid Vigilante is shown as being captured, and Jack shoots him in the head. Flashing
is his partner in
yes
his team.
Yes. Flashing back, Kid Vigilante takes Ladybug, we'll talk about her more later, to his HQ to retrieve some information. Robot 9 goes to Micro Tokyo to retrieve something. That's pretty much what happens in this issue. Okay, Damian, do you want to go ahead and read that blurb on the inside cover for this issue?
The world was ending. With the heroes gone, there was no one willing to stand against the coming darkness, except us. We were the sidekicks, adopted, appointed, or recruited, nephews, daughters, cousins, children. We weren't ready, and the world wasn't ready to trust us with the power we had.
So who do you think is narrating these introductions?
I've got to feel it was Kid Vigilante, but what do you think?
Well, to me, that's the obvious choice, right? But the way that, that we weren't ready and the world wasn't ready to trust us. I know, just that we weren't ready, that seems to be counter to the confident Kid Vigilante that we've been shown so far. So it made me question that a little bit. But logically, who really could that be? It seems like it has to be Kid Vigilante.
I suppose it could be Jack, who goes through many turns in our understanding of who he is and what he's up to.
That's interesting. Yeah, I kind of like that.
And he's kind of the old young one.
Yes.
But again, I guess that's not brought up in this issue. But so we get another very light Silver Age Ladybug meeting Kid Vigilante and or I guess Ladybug is the Insectra's sidekick, and we see now that Kid Vigilante also worked with someone named Kid Victory, and they both would like to date her apparently.
Yeah.
Plus the 9 hero machines Micro Tokyo and their creator Professor Takumi Onomato. I don't know if we ever hear about him again. If we do, I missed it.
I did look for that. I think this is the only reference to him. But you do see Robot 9 there. Right. So there's this whole story of these robots that we don't get.
Right.
And then of course, just on that first page, interesting. How often do we see a supervillain with a sidekick? I really like that quality of this,
right.
Of this story. It's not often. I mean, you get super villains partnering together, working together, but rarely do you see a supervillain with a sidekick. So that
Right.
was cool.
But in this world, I think most of the supervillains had sidekicks too.
Probably, yeah. What an interesting world. And yeah, you're
It's
right.
such a fun light picture, and then we turn the page to the most
Yes.
hideous looking picture of
Oh
a
my gosh. Okay,
toothless
so
old man wearing a mask.
yes. So Damien, hold that up. Again, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So the trick with YouTube is whoever's talking is the one whose image is actually showing to the audience.
Right.
So that's why I talk when I hold things up. So pardon me. But yeah, so we get this. We eventually learn he's the American spirit. I don't know if we learn right away. So I think he's like a Captain America who's aged naturally and become the president of the United States.
Well, not only that, but
I think so.
Yeah, he says the first president of the global United States.
Oh, interesting. I missed that.
Yeah, whatever that means.
Right.
But again, notice
you got other hints that it's not like our United States.
Right, of course. But yeah, I obviously he looks like a Captain America type character.
Right.
Again, notice though, I talked about the close-ups of fists and arms and stuff like that. You get that first page showing the guy who ends up being called American Spirit. You get that close-up of his mouth. He's missing a tooth, but then it again close at the bottom. It close-ups on his face, and you get that those big masks that
Right.
Jones likes to draw on characters. Anyway, but he's talking about basically. I think he's addressing. I don't know. I don't know who he's addressing here, but he's essentially.
He says "my fellow Americans,"
That's
so I was
true.
wondering if it was televised.
Right, but then in that second page, he's shown there in his wheelchair with the guard behind him, and I wasn't sure if he was talking to
Kid Vigilante directly.
Yeah, it's kind of weird in that sense, but you can assume that there's maybe a camera in front of him that we're not seeing. But yeah, he talks about how what Kid Vigilante does is a terrorist act, and they can't abide that. And then you get that shocking third page reveal of Jack going up and shooting Kid Vigilante in the head. I mean, God, how that is just so brutal.
Right. In the first issue, we were led up slowly into the brutality. In the second issue, we're slapped in the face with it, sort of right at the beginning.
That is, and I mean, you see, it looks like brain matter being splattered outside the back of his head.
I know it's
painful.
It's a little
to look
more
at.
real than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else about those pages, Damian?
Not without talking about future issues, really.
Yeah. So then
we flash back and we don't come back to that scene for this issue.
Yeah. I think maybe this is the first time that we see Jack Fearless's robot arms.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Because I think we saw him. He had a jacket on or something in the previous issue, but now he's got these robot arms, and that does we find out more about that.
I believe the modern day Bucky, the revived Bucky, has
of course,
a robot
the Winter
arm.
Soldier. Yeah, right. I completely forgot about that. Oh my gosh, that's even more of a direct connection, isn't it? Yeah. It's like so. Jack Fearless is kind of like a mashup between Nick Fury and Bucky.
Bucky, very much the
what
two.
What a weird combination.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I don't know about current Captain America, but when I used to read him a lot as a kid, he was always teaming up with Nick Fury.
Okay, see, I'm not all that familiar with the history.
Why they mashed the two together in their brain. Bucky was not around in the 70s and early 80s Captain America, but Nick Fury was there all the time. And they were always squabbling with each other. Nick Fury always thought that Captain America was trying to steal his dame, his girlfriend, who was always called a dame.
Oh my gosh. So that is a period of or a set of comics that I am woefully lacking in having read. So it sounds like I need to go find some back issues.
Well, there's a very interesting Steve Englehart run in the mid 70s Captain America that I would think is worth looking for.
Oh, wait. Englehart did that? I definitely got to pick that up. I love Englehart's Batman, so that makes total sense.
Anyway,
Okay.
we're digressing quite a
Yes,
bit.
we are just a little bit. Okay,
Then
so
we go to the mansion in the next page where it says earlier. And this is where I suspected that Kid Vigilante was a Robin substitute, but now it's extremely clear because they're going down into the basement of the mansion where there's a robot dinosaur and other gear that is vaguely or quite specifically just like Batman stuff.
yeah, yeah. The that particular panel, you have they show this plane, this polka dotted plane hanging from above, and you got that robot dino in the background there. So yeah, it's the Batcave. Even that plane, I remember seeing pictures of the Batcave where a bat plane was hanging from above. So totally
Right.
evocative of the Batcave. So I really like that.
Everything but the giant penny.
Yes, yes. But
Although,
we
wait
do.
a minute. Then in profile,
Oh, yep. There you go.
there's what might be a giant penny there.
Yeah. You
So
turn the
it
page.
definitely pays to be an experienced comic book reader to read this.
Well,
Not that I'm saying you wouldn't enjoy it without, but it definitely
exactly.
pays
But
off.
it's like all of the Easter eggs, if you will,
Right.
in the comic book movies, based movies, and the television shows. You get another layer of enjoyment if you know those things. Whereas, if you're coming into this new, it's, you see a guy and this girl walking into this technologically or a place that has all this technology in it, and some of it looks kind of weird. A robot dino, what?
Yeah, and then already just with that fun reminder of silver and even golden age Batman, but then they just look so grim, and then you turn the page and it's definitely nothing you would see in the silver or golden age Batman.
Okay, and you're referring to
This shot of someone who looks just like him,
yes,
in
yeah.
a tank.
And he calls him brother. So
Brother, hello, brother. Right.
So we presume that's Kid Victory, that referenced on the
Right.
first page.
Because we've seen Kid Victory now, and that's an interesting twist on Batman to imagine him having twin sidekicks.
Yes. Although I will admit that I thought possibly that this was a clone of Kid Vigilante.
Uh-huh.
He just kind of calls him that his clone brother.
That's true. They could be.
But
They both could be
there's
clones
nothing
of their father.
directly about that. Oh, yeah.
And we currently have the whole idea that from Scott Snyder that Batman's going to clone himself in the future and give himself traumatic memories to keep turning his clones into Batman.
Okay. And then, so now we get into, so now we are what? This is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages into the story, and we join Yoshimi in Micro Tokyo. So even though she's featured on the cover, it's 7 pages in, and we finally get to her story.
Right.
So that I thought that was, again, that's why I talked about her being on the cover as an interesting choice comparatively to the other issue. But otherwise, Micro Tokyo, flying cars, so it's technologically advanced. They're threatening her to the point of they will kill her if she doesn't basically surrender. And,
right.
and she's confidently flying into this place to get whatever it is that she's
right.
after.
Well, and they say loss of citizenship will result in termination.
Yes.
Which implies a very dystopian place, even though at first it looks very appealing, because if you're not a citizen, they kill you.
Yeah, good point. It's very utopian looking society. The politics here probably aren't as inviting.
Right. There's a lot of brutality holding together this society.
Even in Micro Tokyo. She flies somewhere and she gets attacked. And so there's that panel, Damian, that at the bottom of one page, you got that blue hand, but this is just me, my neurons misfiring, but it reminded me of Blue Beetle's bug for some reason.
Yeah, I thought some kind of robot bug was attaching her when I first looked at the picture.
But you do see on the next page that that's just the hand of these two giant robots, which are not the same kind of robots that Yoshimi drives.
True.
In fact, they have the infinity symbol on their chests.
Right.
So,
So maybe there was an old robot team that was called, what do they say at the beginning? 9 hero machines.
yes.
But now they've replaced it with something else, maybe more that says Infinity on it and is perhaps more fascistic. Or
Mm-hmm. And then the design, that you compare the design between these newer robots
right,
and the Robot 9 style, and you can definitely see a transition from older tech to newer tech. So that's, kind of neat,
right.
just from a visual standpoint.
That's true. I hadn't thought about that, but it really indicates change there. So, and then we get the intercutting of Kid Vigilante with his brother talking to his brother's lifeless body in the tank.
Oh, and he said Kid Vigilante does say we're not ready, and so that kind of echoes
The
the
beginning.
frontispiece. Yeah, we
Right.
weren't ready. So maybe okay. I'm going to officially say uh, here and now that's Kid Vigilante, and we won't consider anybody else for that text.
Even though we may consider this a potential hidden masterpiece, it doesn't mean that everything's perfect about it, right?
That's true.
So there
That's
may
very
be a
true.
little inconsistency in Kid Vigilante's personality, where
Yeah.
he does have doubts.
Yeah, and that is that we get that a lot in this issue, which is we'll come to the specifics of that.
Right.
And then so yeah, now we're transitioning each. I don't know if you noticed this, but each page, alternating pages, are focused on Kid Vigilante with his brother, and then what's happening
Right.
with Yoshimi, and that goes on for a few pages, but returns to it again as we go on. So it's interesting the way that Jones designed these pages coming up.
Right. It's
Um,
kind of a fluctuating intensity as then we go into a double page battle with Yoshimi,
right.
and then we get a double page sort of emotional gut punch with Kid Vigilante
Yes.
breaking down and crying and
Yeah.
taking off his mask, even
Yes.
where we see his bruised face as he's crying.
Yeah. And yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I really wanted to touch on that scene too when we get to that. I'll mention one thing about the Micro Tokyo scene. Not only is it potentially life threatening to in Yoshimi's case, but one of the characters in the newer robot says, "You are a fool, Yoshimi. No woman may pilot the gigantobots. That right is held by men alone." So
Yeah,
you get this extremely sexist attitude here from these characters.
right. And it does make me admire her all the more that she stands up to that.
Yes. Yeah. She says, "Men, I see no men here, just little boys playing soldier,
Right.
raw recruits who think they know what it takes to be a pilot. Now I order you to stand down, or face the consequences." I just love the bravado of this character. She is not going to take their guff, and she's going to let them have it if they're not smart enough to recognize they're better.
Right. So this is kind of, I mean, it's really good, but it's more traditional comic book stuff in a way, where we got a plucky hero beating the odds and taking down people, who, and she doesn't kill them or anything, but people who establish themselves as being deserving of being taken down a notch or
Yes.
three.
Yes, exactly. On the next page, it's just 3 panels, but you get almost a 2-page splash. But I love what she's like. You know what this is? It's remote control, bitches. And then her robot shows up,
Which I'm sure is a direct translation from Japanese. And she says that line in some later issue, right? So that's an important line: remote control, bitches.
Yeah, yeah. And then the next 2 pages, like I said, Damian, I'm gonna try to go through this quickly. So if we're skipping over anything,
No, I was the one rushing ahead, so keep going. Yeah.
But feel free to jump back if we need to. The next 2 pages are what you mentioned these already. This is a very emotional scene, a very intimate scene between Ladybug and Kid Vigilante. He's talking to his brother. Vigilante explains to Ladybug that he's in there not because of some scheme by a supervillain. He was defeated in battle or anything. It was a neurological disorder, and I assume so. He mentions Red Vengeance, so that's their mentor. I assume that's their father as well.
Right. I had assumed the guy's name was Vigilante until that moment, and then I forgot about it.
Right. So you have Vengeance, Vigilante, and Victory. So you got that whole alliterative thing. Put him in stasis and wired him into the computers. He's not dead, but he's not, and then, dot, dot, dot. He's not alive is what he's referring to. And then Vigilante breaks down. You see him in a very vulnerable moment, which up to this point is really took me aback, because he's shown such confidence in everything that we've seen him in so far. And Ladybug puts her hand on his shoulder. He reciprocates, and then turns to her. And you mentioned the black eye. You get that scene there where he just looks at her. He's got that huge black eye. He's crying and tells her his name, Andrew. My name is Andrew. And you see, with the mask removed, you see his pupils. You see his eyes for the first time, I think. So again, the eyes.
He looks even younger with his mask removed, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah. That old what's that old saying? The eyes are the windows to the soul, and right. You get a very human moment with this character, between these characters, that we don't see when he wears the mask. So I thought that was just an interesting contrast.
Yeah. This is kind of the pivotal scene of the issue, really. I guess it then gets broken up from the robot fight, and then we come back to it.
Yeah.
Or no, we don't come back to it till the following. Okay. Yeah. It is the pivotal scene.
It is, yeah.
We don't fully realize what has just happened till a few pages later.
Right. So Vigilante does take something out of the device of his that tube, that stasis tube from his brother.
Right.
And more importantly, Vigilante says, "Goodbye, brother." When he pulls that out, and it looks sort of like a USB stick, a sort of futuristic looking USB stick. You see a spark of power there, and the lights go out. And during the course of these scenes with Vigilante, at the top and bottom of the pages, you see this heartbeat monitor going along, and as soon as he pulls that out, the lights go dim. That you don't see the heartbeat; it just goes flat as it goes across the page. So, did he just kill his brother?
Yeah. I wasn't sure then, but I thought maybe that's what, because it does. I guess it's flatlined there, but I wasn't sure when I first read it if that's.
Well, it is kind of hard to see because of the way that they draw the other heartbeats going through, but the flat lines in all the other pages are definitely shorter than the one that they show on that final scene.
Right. But I wish, yeah, and I realized later that is what happens, but
again, how dire is the situation that they're in, that Vigilante feels like in order to accomplish what he thinks he needs to accomplish, he has to murder his dying but not yet dead brother.
Right.
A form of euthanasia.
Did you feel sure at this point that he really had to do it?
I felt that he was sure he needed to do it.
There was still a little part of me from the last issue that wondered if there was some other reason that was less admirable why he was pulling the plug on his brother.
But considering how, that first issue, he talks about how his superpower is he's always right. I guess I kind of just accepted it that this is the thing that needs to happen.
Right.
As much as I didn't like it.
Accept it once we learned, what it was.
Mm-hmm. All right. We get the next two pages are just more battle scene. What do you think of the structure, the narrative of this 2-page spread of the battle scene? Because you commented on that earlier with the fight between Apollo and Vigilante. What about the scene here?
I like the layouts. Given that I'm kind of a wimp about violence, it's nice when robots are beating each other up rather than humans. But he conveys the action really well. I guess I don't have a lot. Maybe your thing about a lot of limbs is still like there's even a fist that goes right through another robot. It does seem to. I think the purpose of this is to show us that her older robot is better than their new ones.
Yes.
At least when piloted by her.
Exactly. I think that's probably key. It's not that necessarily that the technology is any better because it's older in some way. It's definitely because of her. Yeah. These guys are no match for this girl.
Yeah, even though they have infinity robots and hers is just number 9.
Exactly. I just like that too. I love stories that feature female characters shown as better than the male counterparts. I just
hopefully your wife points that out to you every now and then.
I'm going to delve just briefly into my personal history, if you don't mind. My parents split up when I was young. I lived with my mom, so I saw this woman hold a family together, get multiple jobs to keep food on the table to pay the bills. So I am intrinsically drawn to characters portrayed, female characters portrayed in such a positive and a positive light, in the way that the Yoshimi is shown here as being strong, independent, and kicking butt. She's not to be trifled with. So I appreciate that in fiction as well.
Right. Well, that's a very powerful piece of information. Yeah. I don't have that situation, and I more respond to the giant robots fighting.
Well, that's good too. I like that too.
That there were no robots, and each one had a different number on it, and the higher the number, the more powerful the robot. But then the robot who just had number 5 on it would have to beat the robot that had a number 10 on it, or something like that.
See, there's so many more stories that could be told in this universe. I think we need to petition Mr. Walker, Jones, and Drake to do more.
Right. In that podcast we both listened to, they did mention that there could be more, but not in the first. Not in the near future, because they need a rest from it all.
Yeah, unfortunately. So we get the next 2 pages. The battle is over. She says, idiots. That's what you are. Childish idiots. Next time I will not be so merciful.
Right.
And then she flies away, and we see Micro Tokyo from above. And this does not look like Japan. This is just, this is an island somewhere in the ocean. And you see this sprawling city. So even though we know it's Micro Tokyo, I still don't get a sense of what that means based on this picture. And I'll just briefly show that for the video viewing people here. So you get this island, but we don't know how big it really is, because it's not, we don't see a sense of scale here, but we do see that the city fills up that island.
Right. It fills up an island, which I assume is a fairly small one. And it has some kind of energy dome over it that she breaks through.
Yeah. And then Magician helps her escape that energy dome.
Creates one of those gateways that she can pop through.
Yeah. So mission accomplished. No worries. Now someone get me a beer large enough for me to climb into. Again, we get more of the personality of Yoshimi, and the more I read about her, the more I love this character.
But folks at home, 12-year-old kids should not be given beer to swim in.
Yes, my comments are not to be taken as being accepting of underage drinking. There's our PSA. And then the final page, we find out that, so Kid Vigilante actually says the module, whatever that thing was, I took from my brother's stasis tube. Oh yeah, there we go. So I was right. It's a stasis tube. Held a remote backup of my dad's memories. And then he shows her something and says, this is the last thing he saw. And she says, but that's ... And he says, yes. But then, okay, now we get ready for war. What the heck did he show her?
I know. Do we ever find out? I don't feel like we do.
I would have agreed with you until you just said that. I just made a connection. I think something coming up in a future issue that we see that we did not see anytime previous may be that thing. But we'll have to take a closer look to it.
And then I'm wondering, did his dad set things up so that the copy of his memory is tied to the life of the other boy?
Yeah.
And you can't access his memory without killing his son. Well,
yeah, which
I don't know why. Just another kind of sick little detail or something.
No, I had exactly the same thought, and it just makes that scene even more heart-wrenching. And I'm going to stop it right there. Damian and I talked a lot about the first 4 issues of Danger Club, so I wanted to break that conversation into 2 parts. So please come back and listen to part 2, where we discuss issues 3 and 4 of this great series. If you'd like to leave feedback about this episode, or if you have questions for us about Danger Club, you can always email me at longboxreview@gmail.com, or via Twitter at longboxreview, or at the website longboxreview.com. Thanks for listening.